Hello YouTube. So I played Persona 4 and honestly it was incredible. If you remember my Persona 3 and Persona 5 comparison video, there were a lot of people in the comments with very strong opinions about Persona 4, which, I was talking about Persona 3 and Persona 5, I wasn't even talking about Persona 4. So I decided to play through Persona 4 Golden myself to see what all the hype was about. And in this video, I'll be sharing my full thoughts of the game and diving into a few topics I didn't cover in the previous Persona video. That being said, here's your spoiler warning for Persona 4 Golden. If you haven't played it yet, or are in the middle of playing, click off the video now. Then come back, because it's really worth a watch. Other than that, let's dive in. At the heart of Persona 4 is its characters, and there's no doubt about it. The investigation team isn't just some group thrown together to solve a case. They feel like actual friends. They fight together, yeah, but they also hang out, support each other, and actually enjoy each other's company. This makes them stand out, especially compared to other Persona games, where the group dynamic can sometimes feel like more of an obligation. Persona 4's cast is hands down the funniest and most entertaining group in this series. Yosuke is the classic loyal best friend who's always at the center of the laughs. Chie, sure, she's a little obsessed with Kung Fu, a little bit too much for me, but she has her moments too. Then there's Yukiko, who has this sweet, quiet vibe until her dark sense of humor shows up out of nowhere. Kanji has a tough guy persona, but he's got this soft side that makes him easy to root for, and his awkward tough guy meets sensitive moments are some of the funniest in the game. Risei's outgoing, energetic attitude keeps the mood up even in serious moments, while Naoto, the serious detective, tries to keep everyone grounded, even though she's still a kid at heart. And then there's Teddy. Oh, Teddy, the mascot with the puns and goofy antics, whose journey to discover himself gives the story some added depth. The game goes even further with its social links, letting you dive into each character's backstory and struggles. Yosuke feels stuck in Inaba and wants to prove himself. Yukiko is trying to figure out who she's outside of her family in, and Kanji faces the stigma for not fitting traditional gender expectations. With each social link, you see them grow, goof around, and share stories, making their friendship feel even more real than other Persona games. And it's not just the main team. The social links with other residents in Inaba give you a glimpse into their lives, challenges, and dreams, adding even more depth to the game's world. By the end, Inaba feels like a real place full of people you've come to know and care about. I wanted to put these two together because it's kind of similar, kind of not. Let me explain. So let's dive into Persona 4 Golden's story. Oh fuck, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but you know what? I love this game, and it does a lot of things right. But here's the thing. For all of its strengths, the main storyline is pretty damn simple. And yeah, that's not a bad thing whatsoever. It just means the story relies heavily on the characters to make it work. It all kicks off when you, no, I don't mean you, I mean you, who arrives in the small town of Inaba. There's a murder mystery tied to a weird place called the Midnight Channel, and you and his friends start investigating. Sounds exciting, but the plot is pretty straightforward. There's not many huge twists or big reveals. It's a murder mystery and that's it. The main story just serves as a setup for what really matters here, the characters and their struggles. Take Yukiko, for example. She feels trapped by her family's expectations and her dungeon reflects that perfectly. Kanji's dungeon, it's all about his fears around masculinity and identity. Each character's journey is personal, raw, and emotional, and that is where Persona 4 shines. The dungeons aren't just levels to clear, they're a look into what each character is wrestling with inside. And when the killer is finally revealed, it is super surprising. But that's really the only time you're gonna feel some type of surprise or shock. But by that point, you're not really playing for the mystery anyways. You're playing because you care about this group of friends who've grown alongside you. So yeah, Persona 4 doesn't need a complex story. It's warm, it's character driven, and that's exactly why it sticks with you. Alright, let's talk about Persona 4's dungeon design. And before you grab your pitchforks, hear me out! The dungeons, conceptually, are actually pretty cool. Each one reflects the inner turmoil or desires of the person they're tied to, kind of like the palaces in Persona 5, where each palace is a reflection of the ruler's distorted view of the world. It's a great idea and adds a lot to the game's psychological vibe. Here's where it gets a bit rough. Actually running through these dungeons, it fucking blows. In Persona 5, the palaces are big enough to give you some breathing room. You can dodge around, admire the surroundings, and avoid guards. Persona 4's dungeon feels like someone decided to make every hallway as cramped and maze-like as possible. The floors are narrow, the walls are tight, and half the time it feels like the game is saying, "Oh, you wanted to avoid these fights." That's too damn bad! You're consistently bumping into walls or shadow, and it just feels so fucking suffocating. Now, before anyone says, it's an older game, what do you expect? I get it, Persona 4 Golden came out in 2011, and it didn't have the luxury of the more modern design we see in Persona 5 for its time. The dungeon design was fine, but looking back now, it's hard not to wish for a little more space to maneuver, or even just a second to chill without bumping into shadows. And to be fair, it's not Persona 3's Tartarus. Let's be real, Tartarus is a fucking nightmare. Persona 4's dungeon at least has some personality and variety, but I do wish a little more room to dodge around and breathe. At times, it feels like trying to escape a swarm of bees in a booth. It's not fun. Alright, let's talk about gameplay. Persona 4 is an older title, so I'm trying to be as fair as possible. But coming from Persona 5 and Persona 3 Reload, it was like I went from a high-speed chase car to a Honda Civic with no wheels. Don't get me wrong, I get that Persona 4 Golden came out in 2011 and it was groundbreaking for its time. But after enjoying the flashy, fast-paced action of Persona 5 and the smoother mechanics of Persona 3 Reload, stepping into Persona 4 was a bit of a shock. The combat feels so basic. You got your turn-based attacks, sure, but there's just something about it that feels so slow. Like, I'm sitting there waiting for my turn, just counting the seconds until I can finally hit something, just to watch a few animations and for it to miss the damn enemy for the 100th fucking time. I mean, where are my baton passes? Where are my theurgy attacks, huh? Instead, I'm stuck with the old school Persona 4 combat, where the most exciting thing is hoping that your teammate doesn't miss the goddamn attack for the 1000th time. There's no, yo, this is gonna be sick moment when you're unleashing an attack. Instead, I'm left watching the same animation for the millionth time. At this point, just let me go back to talking to my teammates or at least hanging out with my social links. In the end, Persona 4's combat is definitely a whiplash experience after the dynamic action in the later games. Sure, it's turn-based and it gets the job done, but after the sleek and snazzy moves of Persona 5, going back to Persona 4 feels like I'm taking a step backward. It's tolerable, but after the chaos of the newer games, it's hard to go back to something so simple. The third act and ending of Persona 4 Golden are a perfect wrap-up, bringing together the game's themes of connection, truth, and facing the darkness within. From the beginning, Persona 4 explores how the bonds we form help us confront our fears, and that all comes together beautifully in the final act. When it reveals that Adachi is the true villain, the story dives into human nature and the cost of rejecting connection. Adachi's view that life is meaningless is the complete opposite of the protagonist. While Adachi isolates himself in bitterness, the protagonist's strength comes from the friendships he's built. The final battle isn't just about beating an Adachi, it's about challenging his nihilism and proving that hope and connection are stronger than despair. As the bonds the protagonist has built stand against Adachi's worldview. The ending hits like a truck, not just because of how the story wraps up, but because we see how much each character has grown. The golden epilogue, if you want to call it, adds a bittersweet touch as the protagonist spends his final days in Inaba, saying goodbye to his friends, reinforcing the idea that meaningful relationships may be temporary, but leave a lasting impact. If there's one thing that could have been more impactful, or maybe it's just me being nitpicky, is Adachi's interrogation by Dojima. Instead of showing us this, the game only tells us about it, missing a chance to dig into Adachi's turmoil and regrets. A scene of Adachi reflecting on his actions would have added depth to his character, even though he's amazing. Seeing Dojima's disappointment and sense of betrayal could have made it even more potent. Even though this moment was skipped, it doesn't take away from the ending's impact. The final confrontation with Adachi captures the game's core struggle: darkness versus light, despair versus hope. The emotional resolution feels earned, and the theme of connection in Persona 4's most powerful message. Even without that extra scene, the ending stays with you, reminding you how important it is to face the truth and hold on to the bonds that give life meaning. I believe Persona 4 Golden is a game that truly sticks with you. While it stands out with a murder mystery, the real heart of the game is about friendship, personal growth, and facing your own true self. The characters feel incredibly depth with their own struggles and moments of growth. From Yosuke's loyalty to Kanji's journey with his identity, these characters are what make the game unforgettable. Sure, the dungeons can feel cramped and the combat might be slow compared to later Persona games, but those minor issues in an otherwise deeply emotional experience, the story is simple, but it's the bond between the characters and their individual struggles that carry the weight. The ending especially ties everything together in a way that feels earned. Persona 4 Golden is about the connection we form and how they help us face our fears. For all its flaws, the game's heart and its message resonates long after you finish playing. That's why I'm giving Persona 4 Golden a 10 out of 10. It's a game that nails the emotional side of storytelling while delivering a memorable, character-driven experience. If you enjoy this type of content and want to see more of it, or you want me to do something else, please comment, like, and subscribe. So other than that, noches.